Hi, my name is Carlos. Welcome to my second vlog. Let's talk about mental health. Hello again, just from a second ago. So, I was supposed to have posted something last week, but last week wasn't easy at all. I was a bit better yesterday, but now the weather has turned grey and rainy and horrible again. Something that is quite common for a lot of us, which is we change with the weather. Psychiatry or the DSM calls it seasonal affective disorder, or now calls it depression with seasonal whatever. I can't remember the correct nomenclature. Well, it doesn't matter. It matters that when the weather really turns bad, mainly in late autumn and late winter, we feel the change and we tend to get more depressed. Some people only have that sort of depression. Some people that have other mood disorders, like myself with cyclothymia, feels it as well. So I tend to be a bit hyper during the summer month and more depressed during winter. When the weather changes from autumn to winter and it gets really cold and rainy and grey and it starts snowing and freezing and all that, I really feel it, and I tend to get far more depressed, and with depression comes irritability and anger. That's what happened last week or week before last, just after I've recorded the last vlog, and it wasn't easy. It scared me. I wanted to stay in bed. I was feeling really down and grumpy and annoyed, and I actually went and talked to the psychiatrist to tell him, okay, I might have the personality traits which work against me. I know about my rumination. Sometimes I just get triggered for silly things or nothing things. I can't call them silly. And I go on and on for hours and days and I just ruminate on it. But there's also other things happening, because I always had the personality traits I have now, at least from a young age. But I was functional. I could go out when the weather was rubbish, and I could get work done, and I could study, and I could perform in a lot of areas. And that really hasn't happened much over the last few years, when depression really brought me down. Anyway, I had a chat with him, and because of my mood changes and the depression, and because I have some periods where I'm better, so there's a lot of mood changes which themselves relate to borderline personality disorder. There's that suspicion of cyclothymia, and he told me to take lithium, another one that said so. And I have a problem with lithium, because it has a very narrow range, functional therapeutic range, and some of us, the way we metabolize it, even within that narrow metabolic range, sometimes we get the toxicity effects, mainly the tremors, the upset tummy, the thyroid problems, the weight gain, the cognitive issues. So yeah, we get all those, and the emotional blunting, which is quite worrying. And I thought, wait a second, I'm not that bad, okay? I used to go from, let's put 0 being suicidal to 100 being manic. I've never been suicidal, I've never been manic. So before I could go from, let's say, 30 in my depression to 65 or 70 in my hyper states, now I'm better. I think I can go from 40 to 60. So I've been more depressed. I've been more hyper when I'm somehow hyper. So I'm going to wait on the lithium for a bit. But anyway, this is all to talk about something I've started last time, which is insight and mindfulness, and how important it is. It is important because in the past, for me, these things would happen 4 or 5 years ago. I would get irritable, I would get hungry, I would moan about everything, I would get really depressed, and I wouldn't know. I would just carry on as usual, and that would affect a lot of things in my life. I couldn't be studying properly. I couldn't work properly. I would be very grumpy and very mean to some of my colleagues and friends and family. And now having the insight, knowing that, okay, something is happening with me. I know what I have. I've read about it. I've learned about it. I've talked about it. That kind of makes me think, okay, this is what's happening. So let's deal with it in the best way possible. So yeah, insight helps a lot. And that brings me to a suggestion. It's not a shameful plug because I don't know the man. He's a Brazilian psychiatrist. His name is Augusto Cury. He's a Brazilian psychiatrist and psychotherapist. And he's got some really good books. I don't know if this one is translated into English. Maybe it is. I will search on Amazon and probably post a link under there if I find it. And this one is the Intelligence Code. He's got nothing to do with intelligence per se. What he argues, his main argument here, is that people tend to take control of everything in their lives as far as their appearance is concerned, the car they buy, the food they eat, whatever. But when it comes to their mind, they don't do that. They just let their mind roam freely on its own and do whatever it decides to do. And in here he talks about a lot of things, and he kind of comes up with a method that deals exactly with that, of being in control of your thoughts, of your mind, of like, in a way, sitting down and having a round table with your thoughts and your mind, and talk to yourself in terms of saying to yourself, wait a second, why are you doing that? Why are you thinking that? Do you think that's positive? Do you think that works? Because we tend to get lost in thought processes and mechanical, automatic behaviors, and we don't give a think about, and those can be harmful to us. And that happens a lot when we have like something like borderline personality disorder. Sometimes we get lost in rumination. We just think about, like, my last most serious episode. My last serious episode was to do with a friend. He changed his behavior towards me, the way he answers the phone or doesn't answer, doesn't pick up. I now in hindsight, I know he's right, because he probably had enough of my things. Although that wasn't the thing. I think he had some changes in his life, and he decided to push backwards a bit. And me having borderline traits, the abandonment issues, if you can. This is all stereotypical thing, but anyway, I didn't like it because I think there was a lot of things we could talk about and say to one another, and he's not that kind of person. He's very traditional. He's young, but he's very traditional Portuguese, very narrow-minded in a lot of things, and so anyway, we didn't talk about it, but I understood loud and clear that I shouldn't call when I needed to say something, or even just for a joke. And I kept days ruminating about it, just moaning about, certain things that weren't said and some that were said. And yes, I had the insight. I knew what was going on, but it was still very difficult to stop. But in a way, it's good to have that insight and mindfulness, because even if I ruminate, at least I can say to myself, wait a second, I know what's happening. It's probably enough. Let's try and do something else. Let's use some DBT skills. Let's do some stuff. But yeah, so I've talked a bit about seasonal affective disorder. I've talked a bit about being in control and mindfulness and insightfulness. And I've said that I'm slightly better than I was last week. And the weather is rubbish again. It's chucking out there. It's pouring down. Now, a bit of a shameful plug. My main hobby at the moment is photography. I'm just an enthusiastic amateur photographer. I've got an Instagram account where I post most of my things. It's cmartins.photos. I put a link here somewhere. So if you're on Instagram and you like photography, please go and follow me, and I'll post more things there. So I think that's it. Hopefully see you next week and talk about something else and something better. Until then, take it one day at a time, because it's all we really have, and make the best out of it and have the best mental health possible. Thank you. Bye.